Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Oh, hey, Max. Nice to see you. It's been a long time.
Hi, yeah, how are you?
Good.
Good.
What a small world. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Humber.
Thank you for
Good
having
evening.
us.
Good to see all your faces.
Been a while indeed. Yes. Yes, it's quite different than just sending emails or texts or social media. Anyway, I'll recede in the background for now. I think you'll be ready to start soon, Jordan.
Yeah, we'll be starting soon when we have a couple more people come in. I think maybe 2-3 minutes, and we should get started soon.
So how's school work for the students in the room? You hear me?
Yes, yeah. I guess I was waiting for someone else to go, but no, it's been good. I'm just yeah. I'm in my Max for context. I'm and everyone else, I guess, in the room. I'm just finishing up the first term of my master's program. So yeah, we're just got about like half a week left of things to do, projects and exams. So it's been hectic.
Good.
Yeah, on top of working. So yeah.
Yeah, same here. Busy last 2 weeks and then winter break. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think that's a common feeling for sure. Common feeling. We have what are we now? This is week 12 at Humber, so we have 2 more weeks, 1 week of classes, presentations, final activities, and then week 14 is exams, as you recall. So we're pretty close. Good. Okay, I'm going to mute myself, let you go, and talk to you later.
Sorry, was it Jordan that the host?
Oh yeah, I was just waiting for a couple more people, but I suppose
Sure.
we'll just wait for them to just show up. So it's
Oh
also
yeah, that's all right. I was just making conversation, but yeah, for sure,
oh no,
whichever works.
that's fine, that's totally okay. But yeah, so in that it's being recorded anyway, so we'll just get started, and hopefully when people show up, they can also look at the video later on too. So welcome everybody. I'd like to welcome Max, Kimberly, and Arena for showing up for today for our webinar series online, of course. And this is our presentation, Where Will International Business Take You? So this is today's agenda. We are going to be going through our introduction, what exactly the International Business Association does for the Humber students, and specifically for the International Business Program. Then we'll go into the introduction of our guests, a Q&A session, then we'll go into some breakout rooms if we have the time, and we have a little quiz based on our speakers today. And then finally, we'll end up on a closing note. So this is the International Business Association here for 2021 fall semester. Not everybody can be with us here today, but this is our members. And so I'll leave it to our guests now to speak about a little bit about themselves, and yeah.
Okay, all right, on the first one. Well, hi everyone. My name is Kimberly. You can also call me Kim. I graduated from the IB program in 2017. I'm also the former president and founder of the IBA, so it's amazing to see what you're all doing with the IBA and to see it still going strong. So good job. But yeah, since graduating, I've been an operations manager for a real estate group called Mango's Management Group. We deal primarily with residential real estate, and we also do development, renovations, investing in property management. So it's a very comprehensive or all-encompassing type of real estate company. My role as an operations manager, I guess to simplify it, would be that I make sure that everything is running smoothly. And that goes from managing our team, from hiring to mentoring to educating, and then also just making sure that all of our contracts are up to speed and kind of overseeing all our transaction life cycle, basically. And I guess I would say that I also make sure that we don't get sued. And because of my experience in real estate, I've gotten, I've learned a lot about contract law, about real estate law, and honestly, first year law of the IB program actually gave me a lot of perspective and helped me with this this job. So just really understanding contract law was huge. So so yeah, that's what I've been doing for the last several years. And right now, so I'm still working that, but part-time. And right now I'm a full-time master's student at Ryerson University. I am doing my master's in urban development and just about finishing up my first semester. And it's been a wild ride. It's been pretty fun. And the reason I got into, I guess I decided to sort of shift gears into urban planning, and it's all kind of related from business to real estate to urban planning. But I really have a passion for housing. And as I'm sure you guys know that our housing market is pretty cutthroat. It's pretty insane, and it's very unaffordable. So I've always been curious as to why and what we can do about it. And I really believe that a major contributor to our housing market and a major answer to fixing our housing market is through policy. And that's what got me curious about urban planning, because it really does affect our everyday lives. And that's how I believe that we can truly enact change. And that's why I chose to go into urban planning. I love the way that's that it has such a major effect on all of our lives, and especially housing. So interestingly, the program itself is competitive, and I've been told that having a business background really helped me get in, because actually a lot of my other peers don't have a business background. So it gives me a different perspective. And realistically, we live in a capitalistic society. So to understand and to have that business acuity, especially within the planning world, has been huge and has really helped me, I would say, get ahead in just understanding the program. So, so yeah, that's what I've been up to. I mean, I can talk more, I guess, later, or about urban planning or about really my experience. Jordan, I guess if there's like a Q&A later, but are we just doing intros for now?
Oh, yeah, we'll be having a Q&A session as we mentioned in the outline. But yeah, thank you so much for those comments, very insightful. So we'll now be going to our next guest speaker. Sorry about that. That was a technical difficulty. So now we'll be going into Max's slides now. Thank you.
No worries. Thanks for having me, everyone. So happy to be part of the panel today and just be back with the IB students. It's always great to represent Humber in any way I can, so thank you. I did graduate in 2019, so I'm still only a couple of years into my career, so don't have quite as much experience as everyone else on the panel. But while I was at Humber, I had the opportunity to lead some student organizations. I unfortunately didn't join IBA, which is ironic, but did some volunteering as well, and worked in a couple of different internships, which kind of led me to, at graduation, I joined Airbus as a consultant in working in project management, and that kind of led me to where I am today, working for the RCMP. So I'm currently working in strategy and digital transformation in the public sector for the RCMP, and specifically in our federal policing division, which has its exciting times for sure. But in line with kind of what the theme of today is, and the IB kind of component, The context of how international business kind of influenced my work and what I'm doing today definitely depends on what the geopolitical environment looks like, how it manifests into some domestic policy, and how the public responds to that. And ultimately, we work on our mandate is public safety. And so where my work is in terms of our mandate depends on what's going on in the world oftentimes. So it's a very exciting job. The strategy is stuff that I pulled from a lot of classes that I did in Humber. Classes like the fourth year strat classes, the economics, business development frameworks that we learned, they've all been things that have really been helpful to my current position. And yeah, I'm excited to answer questions and talk more about my current role.
Great, thank you for that. Would you like to go through your slides as well if you want?
That's okay right now. Thanks.
Okay, that's fine. So I'll just quickly past those slides. And here you go. This is our next speaker.
Hi everyone, my name is Arina. It's very nice to be back and see familiar faces. I graduated in 2017 and was quite involved in student life, been VP of IBA, was a peer mentor at FYE, orientation leader, DECA delegate. So quite enjoyed student life and always recommend everyone to volunteer and be involved on campus because it really helps your resume to stand out. And then I did internship during my program at the logistics company. And that's where I really found the passion for supply chain, because as you might know, logistics is just a part of supply chain. So after graduation, I landed a job as a supply chain analyst in a gold mining company. So I've been with her for about 3 years, got to travel around different countries and to the global mining sites. It was a very great experience to kind of apply my international business knowledge to real work practice, as I was working with teams in Brazil and West Africa and Mauritania, and in the United States as well, and with Chile. So really helped around the operations globally and applied a lot of knowledge that I learned from the program. And then my next role was as senior supply chain analyst at the Rogers Communications. So I spent with them a bit over a year, got to see more of supply chain on the customer side, a little bit more of e-commerce, because with COVID-19 pandemic, we started shipping the mobile phones and accessories directly to consumers. So that was very interesting to see that part of supply chain. Also did my professional designation in supply chain management to kind of build on that knowledge. And recently in this September, I started a full-time MBA program at Rogers School of Management. Always wanted to do an MBA, and I thought it's about the right time. But as you can see, all my professional career, I've been always in supply chain, and even now I'm working as a teaching assistant to a supply chain professor in school. So continue kind of building on that knowledge and being in that field, and happy to share maybe something about my experience and also what kind of jobs you might find after graduating from the program.
Irina as well. Very interesting details from all three of you, and I'm excited to also ask a lot of questions about what we're going to be doing in the Q&A section now. So this is the Q&A section. So we just have a couple of questions based on what you have learned since graduating, what you learned during school, and then what you've since learned in your careers. So I'd like to ask the panel, what have you since applied in your core studies since you've graduated? Like what specifically did you learn at Humber that you've directly applied in your work life? So it's open to anybody if you like. Irina, you can go first.
I think it would be easier if we just do the hand so we
No,
don't cut off each other. Well, personally, logistics course was one of the courses that sparked my interest and a passion for supply chain. I find the international business programs allow you to get insights from all different industries, whether it would be HR or whether it's finance or accounting or logistics marketing. You really get to see all the different fields within the business and then pick something that you might interest. So I feel that the program brings the best to the students in terms of giving them examples of all kinds of jobs they might find. And also, even though I work in supply chain, I always interact with our finance team. I always interact with our HR team, and just understanding the business from the courses that we took helps me to understand their perspective, and being able to speak with them on equals, as I have the knowledge from the classes I took at the program. So compared if I only, for example, studied logistics or supply chain and was only narrowly focused. So it really builds you as a business professional rather than like a one niche field professional. And that's amazing, because not only you can able to interact with different departments when you start working in the company, but you also can try yourself in one role and then can move to a completely different industry or team and try yourself somewhere else, just because your degree prepares you for a variety of the roles that's out there. So that's my take on that.
I can jump in on that just to piggyback a little bit on what Irina said. I guess there's two kind of ways I've applied my courses. One is kind of in the interview phase leading up to. Often I've had the opportunity or challenge, I guess, in case studies and things like that you'll be exposed to in a second or third round interview, where you have to be able to analyze large set of data, present a solution, and kind of have that synthesis, which is a big skill that I learned in the degree. In terms of the second component is the project side. So while I was working in as a consultant, there was a lot of project management work that came out of, I would often reference my operations management textbook. I'm not ashamed of that. It helped me a lot. But more so in my current role, we're looking at a lot of the global trends to kind of make those links of macroeconomic trends that with domestic policies that influence our work. Things like the drug supply chains or cartel supply chains that you need to understand, some of the finance elements as well in analyzing client finances, and the optimizations that can come out of that. There's so many things that I've taken from the degree, like where I still reference my textbooks probably on a weekly basis.
That's awesome. Yeah, so I mean, I would agree with Irina too, that because of how comprehensive it was, it gave me the foundation to be able to communicate with people of all different backgrounds, coming from all different backgrounds. So that's what I love the most. With respect to real estate, I really, what really helped was economics and law. And economics because, and I know at the time it's silly to have to keep drawing all those little graphs in class, but it does kind of, it helps you understand that it's honestly, you're really applying the simple supply and demand model to realize that is what's happening in the real estate market. So to have that understanding definitely gave me a better perspective of what was going on in the real estate market, and just understanding that we have a lack of supply in our housing market, and that's what's causing the inaffordability. And then law, I mentioned it earlier, so I kind of jumped the gun there, but just, yeah, really understanding the legalese, the contract law. And now I deal with a lot of lawyers, so having that background definitely really helps as well.
There are definitely some interesting perspectives from all three of you. I must agree. As a student, I've actually learned a lot from all those courses. As you mentioned, supply chain. Well, in our term now in the fall 2019, which Pierre just mentioned, we have Introduction to Supply Chain Management, which, as Irina said, it's very useful. It's very interesting to learn as well, and that's actually something I actually want to go into. So I'd like to ask Irina more about that. There's also the international logistics course that I find very interesting as well. So I personally actually want to go into a supply chain program. And you mentioned economics and business law. Those are also important for, I think, international business students to learn as well, specifically international trade law. So I do agree, as Max also said, you do always have to look and review at all the stuff, because you sort of just, when you're doing your course load, you just sort of read it and then you forget about it, but you always have to continually apply that. And so hearing that from Max as well, constantly having to refer to the textbook, I think, is important too, because I don't remember everything that I've learned, especially with this latest course that Pierre is teaching this semester, and environmental economics. I don't know if any of you have taken that course, but I remember I always have to go back to the textbook every time he says something, because I always have to remember something about it. But I don't know, it could just be me. But what does the panel think on that?
Sorry, what was the last part?
Like, what does the panel think about, like, the sort of course load? Did you take environmental economics during? Yeah, okay. Do you remember it being difficult or easy? Because I remember I always have to look through the textbook personally, but. With
Pierre on the line, I'll say it was my favorite class.
Okay, I guess I should have mentioned that. Yeah, he's on the line as well, so I forgot about that. Okay, so moving on to the next question. What do you think students should study up further with respect to when they go into the workforce? It's open to anybody again. I think, as Irina mentioned, you could always raise your hand as well to facilitate the discussion.
I guess I could go first. I think if I could go back to school and did something on top of the curriculum, I would probably learn something more about technology and some different tools, whether it's tools for building dashboards, or maybe get into a little bit of coding, because I find technology is prevalent in pretty much every industry today. And if you know some of those tools that are typically asked from the companies, like if, for example, look what a tools being used in finance, or what a tools being used in supply chain, or maybe looking specifically for the role, let's say data analyst role, that would actually help you to stand out, because it's not always included in the courses. I know in some maybe courses you might have experience working, maybe doing the assignments with certain softwares, but usually it's not part of the curriculum. So I would highly recommend just maybe pick something that sparks your interest and get maybe certification. I know online you can find some courses that are even free or maybe very affordable, and just add it to your resume, because technology has been really big thing. So I feel I could have added that to my resume before, but I had to learn it after, when I started working and kind of building it from the ground and going forward. So that would be my advice.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Irina, too. Like leaving Humber, I had wished I had focused more on Excel type of like models, or just using Excel more. And I know in our stats class we did use it, but students should go beyond that. And there are extra courses out there, free YouTube videos, tutorials to because it is a very high demand skill. Yeah, that's what really any type of industry is really looking for, to be able to use that. So that's huge. Another one, I guess I would say, and this isn't really a course specific thing, it's just a general thing too, that you can just learn from real life, but understanding, communicating with different people, and whether that be over email, over the phone, or in business meetings, in formal lunch meetings, just understanding the etiquette as well. It's a very specific type of thing to understand, but and I believe we had that one communications class course in the program, but I think it should have went beyond that. And I think when I was with the IBA, we didn't have time to, but I wanted to host an etiquette class, a little workshop, because if in an international business setting, you are going to be if you do want to be in an international business role, you're going to be meeting people from around the world, from different cultures, different backgrounds, who have a different understanding of etiquette. So just being able to understand that, absolutely important. So definitely, I think is key for me.
I will second and third that, I guess. The digital transformation element in my role has largely been self-teaching and having to kind of expand my knowledge as much as possible on some of these tools. I know that tools like SAS or SQL and being able to have those once you graduate are really key in the job market. But to piggyback on what they've said so far is the Excel and being able to synthesize or analyze massive amounts of data and being able to have that and bring it and present and communicate that as a solution, again, is really good for students. That's something I wish I had spent more time on, is analyzing like mass amounts of data. And then I think a second part is maybe referencing more journals and articles that are published, just to get a sense of what's going on in the world and make some more connections to things that we use in our classes. So we have a great curriculum we had a great curriculum in that it made great applications, but I think being able to reference, whether it's reading the journal or the Economist, like you can kind of make some of these real world trend connections that I think are really beneficial to bring into an employer.
Great stuff. Thanks everybody. If I could ask a question to Kimberly, specifically on the etiquette question section, like what were you sort of like looking for in that like etiquette webinar or like session that you want to pursue?
Yeah, I guess, I mean, I'll give an example, and I think it might have been mentioned in the bio thing or what you guys advertised, but I had lunch with a former prime minister, and I didn't know which fork to use. So it was as simple as that kind of etiquette, because you're going to be having, I mean, if you plan to go into the business world, you're going to be having business meetings like that, and even just as little as that is I find is important. And sometimes it's getting the deal done. And obviously this wasn't a business meeting. I wasn't doing business with the prime minister, but I just really being able to handle myself in that type of setting professionally, I thought was important. I think I figured it out at the time, but I do know that other business programs in Ontario, other universities do host etiquette classes as well for their business students. So yeah, that was just one example. But yeah, and I know that other programs, just even teaching or understanding, how to refer to different people, especially if you're meeting someone important from another country, just what to refer to them as. Little things like that is what I had imagined for that workshop.
I see, interesting stuff. So did you eventually figure out which fork you had to use when you were speaking with the prime minister?
I think it was the outside. I mean, there was multiple forks. So I think it goes out from in. I tried to copy everyone else. So
I see. I didn't know that there was such I didn't know there was that etiquette aspect to that. So thanks for letting us know.
Yeah.
All right. So
absolutely important.
I see. All right. So we'll now be going to the next section of our Q&A. This one's on careers. So we're going to be discussing in this section how your careers looked like so far. So these are the questions, and so I'll ask again to the audience. To the panel. Anybody can feel free to jump in. So what opportunities do you think are available to IB graduates as soon as they graduate? What employers are looking for IB students? Max, you can go ahead.
I can jump in. I think there's no particular brand or company reputation that specifies IB, but I think that with your international business exposure, you're looking at any multinational organization or anything that has exposure to international markets and things like that. So it could really even just be a small firm that has big multinational clients as well. And then being able to make those distinct connections in your work, I think is a really important opportunity.
Yeah, I would probably second on that as well. Just because this program stands out with the name of international business. When you apply to jobs, you can really leverage your capstone project experience and speak about it and mention that you brought a product. For example, we had to bring a product to another country or business to another country, and talk about it as your experience. From you, like even put it on the resume, and it really stands out because the company knows that you're able to see kind of beyond just local operations, but globally, and see in the big picture for the business. I worked for logistics company and a mining company, and they both had multinational operations, but also just the diversity of courses that we spoke before allows you to really pick any career. And then if you work in a company that just operates domestically, you know that you can go to, again, any team. You can work for marketing, you can work for HR. You probably might need to add some kind of like a certifications or designations, particularly for your industry. For example, if you decide to present with accounting, you can get CPA. If for example, I did supply chain, so I got the supply chain designation. Kind of build a little bit on top of that, because you might seem a little bit more like generic when you start say, oh, I had experience for all courses. However, I think it's more an advantage rather than disadvantage having that broad experience. So really, sky's is the limit when it comes to jobs, and you can really apply to anything. And I guess one more thing that I would like to add, try to, if you have a core program in the program, try to look into the industries that you're interested about and start early in terms of thinking where you would like to take your career, so that you take it in, like I think it's after the third year, you do the internship, and then the fourth year you can focus really on building your resume specifically for that industry field. But again, you might not like your internship and decide it's not something for you, so that's also a great part of the program, that you have that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much else to add. I think Max and Irina pretty much covered it, but really just emphasizing again, the limits are endless with this program, because it's so comprehensive, and you can do something like I did and go into urban planning, which I had no idea had any relation to business, and I really thought that I would have had to start over, but actually it's with this program specifically that I got into, and it's quite competitive. They do value a business background, and I know many other master's programs do as well. So yeah, sky's the limit, like Irina said.
Okay, well, interesting stuff. To piggyback on what Irina said, with respect to that sort of jack of all trades, you get this sort of like broad business background. You mentioned that you're going into supply chain. What sort of like supply chain certification did you work towards getting eventually?
There are a few kind of key ones that allows you to specialize. So there is certification for inventory management, there's certification for logistics, and some of them are multi-levels, like I think similar to CFA, where you get a financial designation. You have to pass certain exams, you have to study. I did, again, more generic, but it covered all areas of supply chain. So I did a certified supply chain professional designation. I did it on my own because I didn't have time with a full-time job to attend the classes. So I just purchased textbooks, studied, tried to get as much knowledge from the course, and then passed the exam. And that really helped me to bring more to the table when I was speaking to my colleagues who already have experience in supply chain. And for me, who just started in that industry, it was very important to get additional education. That's why I always recommend whenever you have any courses available, or sometimes even with the company might sponsor you certain certifications or send you to different conferences. Always take the advantage of it and be involved as much as possible, because it all adds up and helps you to be a better professional.
Very interesting insight. And we're going to go into another question that is related to insights. So upon entering the workforce, what are some trends or insights around the world that you have realized require understanding from the opportunity that you've gone into? So in your career, what are some trends that you think are going around the world that you think more people should know about? And again, the floor is open to anybody.
I think I can start. I mean, off the top of my head, so I'm speaking more towards about, real estate, urban planning. Immigration has had a huge impact on our housing policy, and it's something that we're still grappling with trends like, so for example, multi-generational households. The highest population of multi-gen households are occupied by new immigrants within the GTA, but also they are the COVID hotspots that we saw in Brampton, Scarborough, etc. Those were more occupied by, or those were, there's a huge correlation between those hotspots and multi-generational households. So, I don't want to like go down into too much of a wormhole there, but really just understanding that, really just immigration for us. It does have an effect on our Canadian economy, our policy, and how we should now start planning for a better integrated society, because a lot of our honestly our planning framework is from 30-40 years ago. We haven't really changed much since. So and it was implemented by, I'm going to be blunt here, by white people. So what can we do to improve on that? So it is a completely different society from the last millennium. So I would say that's a different trend, just the globalization of people.
Max, you can go ahead now.
Just to piggyback off that, for me, I've kind of come across three broad trends. But to what Kimberly mentioned, the policies on immigration and a lot of policies end up manifesting in rising social tensions and protests and demonstrations, and rightly so. And a lot of on how it impacts what the RCMP does specifically and how we respond is through allocating resources and for specific demonstrations, maybe on really sensitive topics, such as immigration or Indigenous rights and things like that, we would allocate more resources, and that impacts the organization in certain ways. The second is kind of the institutional disruption and things that I can think of as a broad theme. And that's more, how economies have changed and on a global scale, how the business competitive environment's really changed, and where, and again, coming back to our industry, is what things like foreign corruption or anti-bribery are like in the industry due to competitive environments. And then the third is that emerging tech trend that, of course, we talked about how important tech is nowadays and that digital disruption. But in my sense is things like cryptocurrencies and blockchain that need to become part of maybe evidence or seizing evidence is what a lot of the investigations end up leading to, and crypto and blockchain is a big part of that. So what the future of crime and the future of investigations and protecting the public is really influenced by those broad three trends, I think.
I would build on that as well. Kim and Max brought very good points. I think the first one I would speak about globalization is that, especially with COVID-19 pandemic and everything going online, there are really no borders anymore. You can get a job in any part of the world just working from your home. So you get more opportunities, but you also get more competition. And then same applies to kind of if you work for companies that do manufacturing or the logistics, for example, there's a lot of competition as you now not just work in locally, but you also have to compete with global companies. So that's why I feel that international business program is so relevant to today's world, because it's literally the trade is happening among all the countries in the world, business, and then also the workforce. Like there's a lot of outsourcing, for example, for IT specialists that might reside in different countries because it's maybe a cheaper workforce or more skilled workforce. So you get to compete with sort of people around the world. So it's very important that you learn how to stand out and kind of build your resume to be prepared for that. And I think if you're in IB program, then you're set for that. But just the whole trend of globalization, and then the second Max that Max mentioned, the technology piece, is that for example, in my master's program in MBA, Masters of Business Administration, we now have 2 courses that are related to technology. So we have sourcing digital services and digital transformation, and just learning about how technology is disrupting all the industries, and whether you're looking at the banking, where you're looking at logistics, where you're looking let's say even with universities now, you can get an education from a university abroad while staying at home, just because so many universities are offering online programs. So technology really changed the landscape, and it will raise a lot of jobs, but it also will create a lot of new jobs. So being able to adapt and embrace the change and never think that things will always be the same way you see them today, having that kind of agility, adaptability will really help you in the future, because technology will continuously change many industries and many companies. So that's one of the trends that kind of started a while ago, but it's ramping up, and especially with the recent environment. So yeah, those 2 would be from me.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think technology is definitely a disruptor. I mean, you can just look at what we're doing now. We're doing a webinar. We would, usually I think the IBA would actually do something on campus and actually have a discussion with a whole bunch of students, but now every student is online, right? But to further on that question with respect to technology, I realize this might be a little bit sensitive because Max is in the public sector, and maybe he's not privy to sharing so much information. But my further additional question here is, you mentioned that blockchain and cryptocurrencies are becoming very prevalent, and there's a potential for crime. What sort of things do you think that students who are interested in maybe working in like a crypto environment should try to do to avoid any legal liabilities? Or if it's too sensitive, though, you don't have to answer. But if there are any tips that you could offer to for people who are interested in crypto from a legal aspect, what do you think that they should know about?
Happy to touch upon it. We want the least amount of criminals coming out of Humber IB program for sure. I honestly don't know enough about blockchain or crypto to give you the specifics, but to the best of my knowledge, everything is recorded in a wallet, and as long as there's no, simple breaking of the rules, or you're not doing anything nefarious with the money, or laundering in any sense of the way. I mean, that's the best way to avoid going outside the lines of the law. But I am of no means a attorney or any of that, but that would be my best advice.
And so our last question on with respect to careers is any job tips, anything quick that you think students should, learn beyond just what we've learned in, say, business career development. What have you learned personally that, wasn't covered in class? And again, it's open to anybody. Irina, you can go ahead.
I see, Kim, you're unmuted. You can go first.
Okay, sure. I guess I will emphasize the importance of networking, and you're going to be told by many people, but it is absolutely important for your career trajectory to network. And I would say that that's how I got this far in life, and the connections I've made for a lifetime. And like that was one of the reasons I was able to have lunch with the Prime Minister. But I've also met several other people, several other executive CEOs from other industries, and because of that, I've received job offers before. And I've also just built relationships that I can genuinely call as friends. But I just really not being afraid to reach out, and the reason that got me down to the path of like with lunch with the former Prime Minister is all I did was send an email to at the time he was the CEO of Purelator, and just asked if he wanted to be a speaker for the IBA. And that led to us having meeting up for a drink, and then just talking, and then he became my mentor. And then one thing led to another, and then I got to there. But I've built other connections from there. And again, all it was an email. So the worst thing they can do is say no. is really was my motive. And yeah, since then I've just made just amazing connections that you absolutely never know where it'll lead you. So I cannot emphasize that enough.
So I can go next. Yeah, networking is huge. Kim brought an amazing point. I would add 2 more things that you can start doing while you're still in school. It's volunteering and part-time jobs. You can do both. You can do one or another, but it just helps your resume to become more full and rich. And just to quickly build on each point. So for volunteering, there are always opportunities on campus. You can volunteer hours. Some of them even pay. Like I know if you become more senior mentor to first-year students, for example, you can even get paid for some of those hours, which is great. But also just being involved in IBA, like student associations, it's always great to see that you want to be involved, you want to put up your hours, you want to bring and change something, and that always stands out. And the second thing, for part-time jobs, it doesn't really matter what kind of job you're doing, whether you're doing some as an office clerk, or do it as a sales associate, or you work in a restaurant. And that's like, it's not about having a job that would help you to go into the career that you would like, because it might be quite difficult to get it while you're still in school. But it's just about showing that you get those simple communication skills, you got those time management skills. I think any type of job is valuable, and it's all about learning those transferable skills that you can bring later to your career. And I always emphasize having either volunteering or part-time jobs, or if you can do both, that would be amazing. I did a lot of seasonal jobs during the, for example, winter breaks when we didn't have classes. So that's where I would get most of my working hours. And then during school, I just did volunteering. So pick something for yourself, something that you enjoy. You will also make a lot of new friends. It's always great to kind of network beyond the school. So yeah, I would recommend those 2.
I would say that was pretty exhaustive in terms of everything that I would have thought of. But yeah, actually, I can't think of anything else right now. Well said.
Well, I mean, I'll add though that to give you perspective. So by the time you all graduate, you will be graduating with thousands of other business students. So what can you do in your time now to add to your resume to make you stand out? Joining the IBA is definitely one thing that helped me stand out as well. But like Irina said, try volunteering at a whether that's within the school or somewhere outside of school. Have a part-time job. Just really get active and push yourself out there.
For sure, those are some excellent tips. Networking, obviously, but it's I think networking is something that everybody, business students do struggle with. But I think those are some good tips that we should really be focusing on. Being able to speak to the former Prime Minister is pretty interesting in itself. So, and so we'll go to our last section for the Q&A. This is career specific, so these are specifically for our guest speakers. So starting with Kimberly, could you provide us with other insights? I know you mentioned some insights already, but what are some other insights into the Toronto housing market? I know a lot of students are looking into like buying a home for themselves, or maybe, they're looking into buying a home somewhere else. So what could you possibly, tell us that, I think students should know regarding the housing market in general?
Oh gosh, okay. So, and I feel like I've talked a lot about the housing market, so I apologize if I'm talking about it too much, but I guess an insight that I would have is really kind of to help you understand why we're experiencing the housing crisis we are now. And that, again, it comes back to the simple economics, supply and demand. It's the housing stock that we have a shortage. So, and because of that, the demand has been high because we don't have as much inventory, and so prices go up. What I'm advocating for, what I plan to advocate for in my career, is it's called the missing middle. We have housing for people that can afford it, people who have an income of 200K plus household income. So, they won't need to worry about the housing price. There's also housing for lower income, although, I won't really speak much there. There's still not much option there. But what about just the average income workers? They really cannot afford a regular average house. So what I'm trying to advocate for is changing our policy to allow for missing middle housing as in, they're just those regular triplexes, duplexes, apartments in basements, because a lot of Toronto actually doesn't allow that. And we're a world-class city. We should be intensifying our area, our very finite amount of land. So by allowing for more units in the house in our geographic area, we will allow for more housing supply in our market. So and that's what I believe will keep prices at a steadier rate than the way it's going now. But that is a very long journey. But yeah, just something to keep in mind about supply and demand.
Can I ask a question? Am I allowed to do that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious if you've studied about like smart cities and urban development in a smart city context. What does that look like for shifting supply and demand?
Yeah. So, I mean, I know. So Sidewalk Labs. I'm sure you're thinking about that one. But that they actually canceled that project. Mostly because they received a lot of negative feedback from community, just because there was concerns about privacy, because the parent company is Alphabet and Google, et cetera. So a lot of what they were doing in their plans, they did want to implement affordable housing, but that was just one small community. So is that enough for our housing supply? Not really. But what they were trying to do was implement like modular type of housing. So you have a building, there's these walls that could be moved. So if a family decided that they wanted to upgrade from a 1-bedroom to a 3-bedroom because their family's growing up, you could move the walls within the building. And I don't know the actual like logistics of how that will work, but that was the plan one of the plans that they had. And all of those type of units would have been affordable units. My issue with when developers say, we have X amount of affordable units or market rate rentals. Market rate rentals are still unaffordable rentals because they're at market rate rentals. So that's my gripe with it. But I would love to see more smart city stuff where I don't think our I guess government regulation has caught up with understanding it yet.
Fair enough. Thank you.
I want to piggyback on that last section though. Did you feel like Sidewalk Labs canceling their project was unfortunate, or do you think that was ultimately the right decision in your opinion? Just a quick yes or no.
Ooh, I don't know. I'm indifferent. I'm gonna have to say that.
Okay, that's fine.
There's a lot more issues with it, but at the same time,
sure.
we did have a loss in innovation. So
for sure, yeah, I agree. And this next question is to Max. What did work at Airbus look like? Going from, an airplane company to, public service, that's quite a drastic shift. So were there any skills that you learned at Airbus that, you applied to RCMP?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you a context of what I was doing at Airbus and then the transferable skills. So the work I was doing at Airbus was kind of twofold. The first was we were doing post-merger integration. So Airbus acquired a type of plane from a company, and we were looking at how we can integrate that into the procurement operations and whatnot. And that procurement side, actually, we did a lot of supply chain analyses and supplier tier mapping around the world. So that was a big part of it. And then the second was the project management element of that in terms of how do we get the project to stay on cost, at the same delivery speed, and on time for shareholder needs kind of thing. And a lot of these skills that I kind of brought from that was in those meeting rooms. I realized that I didn't want to be about the project delivery. I was actually more curious about the strategy and the innovation behind it. So, what made that company want to merge or acquire that kind of thing. And that was some of the stuff that I was really interested in at Humber that I missed out on in the first 6 months or so of my Airbus job. But that's kind of what the key parts I took from it were project management and a lot of the analyses that I was doing in the supplier tier mapping. But then what I wanted to do in strategy is kind of where I took off.
Good stuff. And finally, to Irina, this is a very international portfolio that you have. You worked in 6 different countries. What did the IB degree do for you in each of those countries? Like what, in one country, you applied a certain thing, and then in another country, you applied another thing. What did the IB degree do for you in those different countries, in your opinion?
So I'd also like to add a little bit of context about that role. So I was working in a gold mining company with headquarters in Toronto, but with operations and actual mining sites in those 6 countries. So it wasn't like me working a year in one country, a year in another. It was just me being in Toronto office and traveling for a week or a few weeks and every other month to different operations and helping them on site. I feel like I've learned so many good things from IBA that it's very hard to pinpoint just one. For example, I used to work with a lot of, for example, issues with suppliers and paying suppliers, for example, in the United States. And there, I was applying my knowledge from finance and accounting, trying to kind of balance out the financial statements and pay out the suppliers and kind of get it done. The cultural aspect was also a big thing. For example, going to the non-English speaking countries. For example, I went to Mauritania and West Africa, and that was just for me a totally different experience. Just the way they do the strategy in the company, the way they approach the work, it was completely different. And I think what also program teaches you is being open-minded. Since you're in kind of an international business program, being open-minded and learning all these different examples of how countries approach business. I think international marketing was actually a very good course for that, because we had so many business cases about different companies and how they operate globally. So that would sort of help me to get an idea about different operations in the world. So I was very open-minded going into different countries. And then instead of bringing the way we think that the work should be done, it's also understanding their point of view and collaborating and learning, because oftentimes you can also learn something from the local operations and those nuances that they have. So it's not just only applying the business knowledge, but also having that kind of grasp of operations globally and being open-minded and being able to think with big picture, what I got from international business program. And yeah, I truly enjoyed working with different teams and made a lot of friends and learned a lot about those countries. So if you get a chance to work for international corporation and get to travel after the program, that would be amazing, because you will definitely be able to apply a lot of knowledge that you would get from this program.
Right, good stuff. You mentioned international marketing, and yeah, you're right. There are a lot of case studies in that course that you do actually learn a lot about the different cultural aspects. Like the pestle model. There's all those different aspects that you have to really look at. So yeah, very I think that is something that we should be taking a look at. So I know that the time is coming to an end soon. It's almost 6. So in the interest of time, I'm going to skip the other sections. So I'd like to thank all 3 of our guest speakers, Kimberly, Max, and Irina, for their perspective, in their different careers, be it, from gold mines to the housing market to the RCMP and Airbus. There's a lot of perspective that, students have learned, or I hope we have learned from, today's session. And I, wholeheartedly thank all 3 of them for their contributions and their insight for today. And on behalf of IBA, we'd all like to thank the 3 of you for coming to our program. So thanks all 3 of you.
Thank you so much. It was great being back and participate in this panel. I really hope that everyone got something today out of this session. So thank you so much.
Jordan, do you mind if I
Thank you,
say a
yeah.
few words?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, no problem.
Well, thank you very much, team. I'm so proud of my graduates, and I'm so proud to see you contribute to this panel with very, very different experiences, very different career paths, interests, and also what is nice to hear in business is some level of passion for what you do, which is not a given. I think business is it's a double-edged sword because it's a very welcoming field. There are a lot of different jobs. There's major churn on the market. It's a great employment market, but at the same time, it's easy to get caught in a routine about doing business and just going on with your little job and being happy with that and not progressing. I look at your profiles, the 3 of you, your age, what you've been through already, and your willingness to undertake new things. Graduate schools, switch jobs, go from the public to the private sector, or in the other in reverse. It's quite amazing, and I think that's for our students listening, that must be comforting because it shows how portable those skills are, and also one thing Irina said is illustrate the danger of over specialization. And I think a major strength of international business is that you've been exposed to a number of things, areas of knowledge. Now, I wish you had said a little bit more about, you had said a little bit more about environmental economics. I know I was listening, but I was expecting more candor. And this is a course that has changed actually quite a bit. We've been through 3 textbooks already, so we've changed after that. With the pandemic, we've actually brought in much more work using Excel, including writing exams, doing assignments, calculations, charts, diagrams, analyzing data, and so on. So we're trying hard. And since fall 19, the international business strategy courses were completely reshuffled to become international strategic business analytics. So students have been introduced to the rudiments of the SaaS software, how to handle larger amounts of data, and so on. So I'm glad that you're pushing this today. I'm glad we did it. We don't look as silly. We look like we've been paying attention. And lastly, on the etiquette, this is an interesting thing, really interesting comment you made, Kimberly. And it's a lot of work. The etiquette's a lot of work. I think one of the things in the degree program that we're preventing from doing is providing any vocational training. So giving Excel courses, we wouldn't be able to do it. We'd be able to force students to use it in our courses, but we can't train in Excel. You can go to Udemy and other courses and so on. Same with etiquette. That would be kind of out of the picture. But we've been pushing email etiquette. We prepared some things that we circulate every semester to the students. And email is a particularly sore dark side of communications. And from that going down, to interactions and social media, texting and all the social media. So we've been doing some of it when possible, but I think we also advise students to get their own. And if you can find a copy of the Miss Manners book from 1982, it's still a classic. I found this, my wife, this belonged to my mother-in-law. My wife put in the recycling. I said, what are you doing? This is a gold bar of etiquette work, which is still valid today. So it's a lot of things. And as you learn, as you're deepening your careers, your pursuits with grad school, different jobs, you're seeing that all those things matter, and they matter a lot. So a lot of small details do matter. So it's important to pay attention to detail, be open to new experiences. And what I heard today makes me really, really hopeful for the future of our program. Thank you.
I'd like to second Professor Gendron on that as well. Yeah, it makes me feel very hopeful about, all the course learning that I've done. It's definitely been a very difficult, couple of semesters being online, but, seeing how it's being actually applied in, 3 different diverse fields is, very, very, very promising, because, you hear a lot about other degree programs that, don't go into anywhere, but, you can see the applicable how these degrees are actually, valid and can actually be used for something. So I think, all these experiences that we've learned today are very valid and very, insightful. So thank you again.
Thank you for your time again, and have a good night.
So we'll now be closing. And for any student who is listening, feel free to join us in any of our social medias, and we'll be posting the recording for the session shortly. So thank you, everybody, and I'll be now closing the meeting. Thank you again for everybody for attending.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Be in touch.
Oh.